People always talk about love like it's a choice, like you sit down with a list, weigh pros and cons, and decide to give someone your forever. But with Nathan, it didn't feel like a choice. It felt like gravity. We met at a museum fundraiser. I was supposed to be networking. Instead, I found myself listening to a man in a corduroy jacket talk passionately about how cities breathe through the buildings people never notice. I couldn't stop smiling. He was nothing like the men I grew up around. My world was private schools, old money, polished smiles, people who sipped wine while subtly dissecting you. Nathan was warm, curious, alive. He didn't need to impress anyone. And somehow that impressed everyone. Well, not everyone. My parents were never cruel to him. They were just composed. They said polite things with tight smiles, nodded a lot, asked vague questions about plans and stability. My mother would tilt her head slightly when he spoke. Not quite judgment, more like evaluation. My father never said anything directly, but I could read it in the way he poured Nathan half glasses of wine, like some invisible quota. Still, I believed love was enough. When Nathan proposed with a ring he'd designed himself, nothing extravagant, just thoughtful, blue like the ocean I dream about, I said yes before he could even finish the sentence. I was sure. We started planning the wedding. I wanted something small, elegant, full of meaning. He cared about the light, the music, the quiet joy of moments that weren't photographed. It was ours. Or at least I thought it was. Then came the engagement party. My parents insisted on hosting it at the estate. I knew it would be grander than Nathan liked, but I wanted to believe that this was the bridge. That once they saw how much he meant to me, they'd finally let go of their quiet reservations. I wish I could say the night was perfect, but the truth is, I saw the way Nathan's shoulders tensed with every conversation. I noticed how my mother's questions turned into soft interrogations, how my father's compliments came with invisible asterisks. And then the toast. My father raised his glass, smiling that composed, careful smile he saves for boardrooms. He spoke about family, about commitment, about how different paths sometimes cross in surprising ways. Then it happened. Of course, he said. Relationships take compromise, especially when people come from very different walks of life. But Emma has always had a generous heart. A few guests chuckled. I froze. He kept going, casually tossing in a line about being glad it wasn't a starving artist, and I felt something hollow open inside my chest. I didn't look at Nathan. I couldn't. I knew what I'd see in his face. I should have said something. Should have taken the mic, the moment, something. But I stayed quiet. I told myself it wasn't the right time, that we'd talk later, that he knew I didn't think that way. But silence sometimes is louder than betrayal. And in that moment I realized, I wasn't just asking him to love me, I was asking him to endure them. And maybe that was never fair. Nathan didn't say a word on the drive home. He stared out the window with that same unreadable expression he wore when he was thinking too much, jaw tense, fingers tapping lightly on his knee like he was keeping time with a song only he could hear. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words were stuck behind my ribs. I kept thinking it was just a moment, just a bad joke, a slip, that maybe my father hadn't meant it the way it sounded. Maybe Nathan would brush it off like he usually did. Maybe we were still okay. But when we pulled into the driveway, and he didn't move to get out of the car, I knew better. Finally, he said, "Was that really how they see me?" I swallowed. It was a joke. That wasn't a joke, Emma. His voice wasn't angry. It was soft, worn, and somehow that was worse. He turned to me, his eyes calm but sharp. "They think I'm temporary, like I'm something you'll outgrow." I shook my head. "That's not true, isn't it?" I hated the way he said it. Like he'd already decided. Like he knew something I wasn't ready to admit. "They don't know you like I do," I whispered. He smiled. Not kindly. "They don't want to." He got out of the car then. And I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel like it could explain what I couldn't say aloud. That maybe deep down, I'd been hoping they would change. That I'd been trying to keep one foot in each world. That I hadn't realized until tonight just how cruel that tightrope had become. The next morning he made coffee like he always did. But he didn't hum. And over the next few days, things got quieter. Not cold, Nathan didn't do cold. But distant. Like he was stepping back, just enough to see the picture more clearly. And maybe for the first time, he didn't like what he saw. We still went to venue visits, still talked about flowers and menus and playlists, but his eyes no longer lit up when I talked about walking down the aisle. And I started noticing the absence of things I used to take for granted. The way he'd always pull me into his arms when I passed by. The half-kisses on my temple when he poured tea. The late-night scribbles in his sketchbook labeled our first home. One night, I found him on the balcony, looking out over the city. I wrapped my arms around him from behind. "Still want to marry me?" He hesitated, just long enough to splinter something inside me. "I want to," he said. "I just don't know if I can marry into this." The bridal boutique smelled like peonies and promise. My mother came with me, of course. She always did. She smiled politely at the consultant, ordered sparkling water, and made notes in the little leather planner she carried like a badge. I stood on the platform, draped in silk and lace, staring at my reflection. I should have felt something, joy maybe, excitement. But instead I just felt tired. "Turn, sweetheart," my mother said. "Yes, that neckline is elegant. Very classic." I turned. The mirror showed a woman playing dress-up in a life that no longer felt hers. "This is the one," the consultant beamed. "He'll cry when he sees you." I swallowed hard. Would he? Because lately, Nathan hadn't been looking at me the same way. Not with resentment. Never that. But like he was waiting for me to make a decision I didn't even know I was being asked to make. That night, I found him packing a small bag. "Just for a few days," he said gently. "I need to think." "Think about what?" He looked at me then, and the quiet in his eyes felt louder than shouting. "About whether I can keep choosing someone who won't choose me in return." My knees went weak. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. "I did choose you. You chose me," he said. "But you never defended me. Not once. Not when it mattered." My lips parted, but there were no words brave enough to climb out. He leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets. "Do you know what it feels like to walk into a room full of people who think you're not good enough for the person you love?" I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said. "I do. Every Sunday dinner. Every charity gala. Every birthday brunch where I showed up without the right dress or the right conversation." He blinked. "I've always been the wrong kind of daughter," I added. "Too curious, too opinionated, not quiet enough. And the day I met you, I finally understood what it felt like to be seen without being measured." My voice broke. "You were the only place I ever felt enough." He sat beside me quietly. "So fight for it," he said softly. "Choose it." Out loud. "Because I'm done pretending this version of us, where you hide me behind their smiles, is enough for me." The invitations were stacked neatly on the dining room table. Cream cardstock, embossed lettering, golden trim. The kind of paper that whispers perfection and status the moment you hold it. I ran my fingers over them like they might burn me. In a way, they already had. The silence in the apartment was unfamiliar. Nathan still hadn't returned. His absence filled the space like fog. Everything looked the same, but none of it felt real anymore. I stared at the RSVP line. "Kindly respond by the 12th. It was the 10th. I picked up my phone and called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Emma, darling, did you go with the silk or the tulle for the veil? Lydia wants to know." "I'm not wearing a veil," I said quietly. Pause. "I don't understand." I stood up and walked to the window. The city below looked blurry through the glass, or maybe through my eyes. "I'm not getting married." A beat of silence. Then, "What nonsense are you talking about?" I took a breath. "You don't love him. You don't even respect him. You've made that clear since the beginning." And I thought I could balance it, that he'd eventually win you over, or that I could buffer the damage. But I was wrong. "Emma." "No," I said louder now. "He deserves to walk into a room and be seen as my choice, not my rebellion." She was quiet again, and then slowly, like venom. "Do you have any idea what people will say?" I let that hang in the air, because I finally understood. She was never worried about love. Only optics. Only reputation. "I don't care what they say," I whispered. And then I hung up. I didn't cry when I canceled the venue, or the caterer, or the string quartet I'd secretly hated from the start. I did cry when I got to Nathan's apartment. He opened the door, and for a moment we just stared at each other. I called it off, I said. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Your parents. They'll survive. Probably blame some passing emotional instability. I smiled through the tears. Let them. He stepped aside to let me in. You're sure? I nodded. I don't want a wedding I have to apologize for. I don't want a marriage built on almosts. I want you. Without the silence. Without the shame. He pulled me into his arms then, and it felt like coming home after wandering for years in someone else's clothes. We didn't elope. We didn't post dramatic statements. We just started over. Quietly. Authentically. Together.